Anecdotal evidence may not be the stuff of public policy making, but it has certainly been influential in raising the profile of the LGBTI agenda across the world. There's another voice, however, perhaps hesitant, less well promoted, often marginalized and ignored, and sometimes hated. This group of individuals from countries across Western Europe, often in their home language, share their stories and the truths that are important to their happiness and well-being. They share them not to offer a new dogma, but because they have found pathways that have been difficult to discover and perhaps even hidden from them. They deserve to be celebrated and encouraged in their willingness to stand up for their own truths. Those who cannot show their faces remind us that speaking out comes with a price in our modern societies.
The common denominator of those who now share their stories is that they do not identify as gay. Some have been in gay relationships or participated in practices that they understand to be gay. They might be aware of homosexual feelings or desires that sometimes arise, but their identity is not gay. They do not see themselves, for example, as gay Christians. They are abstinent and experiencing the reality of change on a continuum. For Christians, there's an important point to be considered here. How accurate is it to speak of these people as celibate homosexuals? Is this a subtle sanctification of the so-called innate homosexual orientation? Many have experienced deep repentance. They avoid claims of perfection, but would shun the idea that they are born or are categorically homosexual. They simply participated in sinful behavior which damaged them spiritually and entrenched addictive patterns.
My name is Alia. I'm from the Netherlands and I'm in my early 30s.
Körülbelül 5 évvel ezelőtt úgy döntöttem, hogy nem szeretnék már homoszexuálisként élni. És ennek részben az az oka, hogy egy ismerősöm megkeresett, és azt mondta, hogy van lehetőség a változásra. Másrészt pedig én akkor már egy zsákutcának a végén álltam.
My name's Lindsay Greaves. I've been married to John for 26 years and we have 5 children.
A zsákutca alatt én azt értem, hogy túl voltam akkor már 5 kapcsolaton. Egymás után 5 nővel volt kapcsolatom, és nem azt a, hogy is mondjam, eredményt adta, vagy nem azt nyújtotta, amit én vártam tőle.
I grew up in a Christian family. It was a kind of like a Christian subculture. And in my family and in the church where I grew up, there was quite a big emphasis on God being like a distant judge rather than Him being a loving Father. And it was also quite like a shame-oriented, very closed subculture. Like it was quite a male-dominated church culture. And so I was growing up as the eldest in a big family. And around like the age of 14, 15, I just realized that I didn't really feel like attracted to guys as a lot of my friends were. And I just came more and more to the realization that I felt attracted to women and to girls. And so, but it was a very shameful thing since my family culture was very shame-oriented. And I have never even heard anyone talking about like having feelings for the same sex. So for many years this was my secret and I had no one really to talk with. And it made me feel very ashamed.
I grew up in the north of England in what seemingly looked like an ordinary family. I was the youngest of 3. I had 2 very much older brothers, and so I was an only child really. My parents were quite disconnected from each other and also from me. So I grew up a very lonely child and just didn't really have any connection with my parents at all, apart from being fed and clothed. They looked after me in that kind of way. I didn't have a close relationship with my mum. In fact, I didn't have any close relationships really with any kind of women as role models. And so my life was outside of the family. One of my earliest memories is trying to get adopted by another family. And I had a sense of a lack of belonging, really. So that was my early years. As I headed into teenage years, I began to feel very overly connected with certain girls. And as my teenage years progressed, that got more intense.
Édesapámmal való kapcsolatom eléggé sebzett volt, sérült volt. Sok éven keresztül úgy tekintettem rá, mint egy ellenségre. Az utóbbi időben ez sokat gyógyult, de azt hiszem, hogy ez sem tett jót a tínédzser fejlődésemnek.
And so when I was around the age of 19-20, I just finally opened up to a very good friend of mine. And we became very close very soon in our friendships, and we really opened up to one another. And at some point, like we started to become very like dependent on one another emotionally. And at some point, we also realized, hey, we are actually just in a relationship, and let's just call it a relationship as well. So I was in a relationship with her for 1.5 years. And after those 1.5 years, we broke up. And for me, it was a very messy breakup. And in the months after this breakup, I was very depressed.
I became a Christian in my early 20s. I'd had a sense of God when I was young, but my parents weren't Christians. I didn't have a religious upbringing, but I had a real desire for something that was quite driving when I was young. I think because I was very lonely, I would often talk to God. I often prayed to God. And I became a Christian then when I was about 22. And I developed a strong relationship with God. And I also just came into a whole new world, really, of belonging in terms of the church, where people hugged each other, and that was very new to me. I'd never experienced anything like that, and the kind of emotional closeness that people had with each other was very, very different from anything I'd ever experienced. I'd become quite a worldling in my teenage years. I used to drink a lot and go to a lot of parties. So this was a whole new world. And I was very aware that this same-sex attraction that I'd had was actually getting worse, not better, when I became a Christian.
Nos, vélhetően ebből a rossz kapcsolatból alakulhatott az ki, hogy bennem fölépült egy fal a férfi kapcsolatokban, tehát a férfiakkal való kapcsolataimban. Tulajdonképpen mindig volt egy ilyen félelem bennem, hogy ők mit gondolnak rólam.
So at some point I went to church, to a different church than the church where I grew up in, and I really felt all of a sudden God's love during that service. And it just really touched me, and I just realized that this lifestyle was not really fulfilling like the deepest void and the deepest desire for love that I had. So I got in touch with this pastor, and I started to really kind of figuring out who God really was. And in that process as well, like those feelings that I had for the same sex were still there. They were not changing. But somehow in that process, I just encountered God's love so deeply that I thought, this is where I want to go for. But those feelings were not changed, and I started to research like, hey, how do Christians think about like homosexuality? Like, what are the Christian views? And I kind of found out about 3 main views. Like, one view is like God is a God of love and faithfulness, and a relationship in love and faithfulness doesn't go against God's character. So also a homosexual relationship doesn't have to be wrong. And another one is people are born that way, and even though you are a Christian, you are either homosexual or heterosexual or bisexual, but it's not gonna change. So when you're a Christian, you need to, and you have those feelings, you need to stay celibate. And the third view is like homosexuality is a combination of nature and nurture, and it is more a fluid, something fluid. It is not like something you are born with. And I kind of identify the most with the last kind of view.
Arra a kérdésre, hogy ez nehéz volt-e segítséget kapni, támogatást kapni, azt mondhatom, hogy én nagyon szerencsés voltam, mert valakit fölkerestem, és az a valaki ismert Németországban egy közösséget, illetve egy intézetet, akik tudtak nekem segíteni, illetve azután találtak nekem olyan terapeutát, aki nyitott volt arra, hogy mik az én céljaim, ezt a tiszteletben tartotta, és ennek megfelelően támogatott engem.
I'd thought that all that would kind of go away, but it didn't. It actually got worse because of the deeper connections that I was making with people, particularly women. And at that point, I got involved in a full-blown relationship with somebody for a couple of years within the context of the church, strangely. At the time, I didn't think that it was wrong. It felt right, and I sort of led a double life in a way, and so did she. But after about 2 years, I began to feel that it was wrong, and I began to know that God had something more for me than this. It wasn't an outside influence, it was from the inside. I felt that God was saying, I've got something more than this for you. And I began to seek help, but there wasn't much really forthcoming at that time. I began to open up my life a bit. I began to be honest with people about what was really going on. And that was the first time I think I'd ever allowed anybody else in to those deep parts of me.
But also, like, I just thought, like, okay, God, like, is big and God can do miracles and He can do great things. Like, let's just really pursue Him and see if there are things, you know, like we all like go through hurts in life. So, and I also realized when I was honest towards myself that there was definitely some hurt, like in my life, in the area of womanhood, in the area of relationships with other women, in the area of relationships with men. So I just kind of decided, okay, let's just start to work on those things and just see what the outcome will be. But God is a good God and God can do great things. And I just started to go through inner healing and to go through my traumas and to work on my issues. And just in that whole process I have changed and I have started to embrace myself as a woman, and I have become to the realization that I didn't need like another woman anymore.
A nőkkel való kapcsolatomban is nagyon sok minden megváltozott. Az is egy fontos dolog, hogy volt bennem egy elég jelentős kisebbrendűségi érzés, és ezt nyilvánvalóan nőkkel szemben éreztem. Ez nagyon nagyban csökkent.
I came back from abroad and I was in faith to meet somebody, and we met at a party and we had an immediate connection with each other. We both shared a love for the Jewish people and for the Bible and for all things God, really, and we had an immediate connection with each other. I knew straight away that this was the man that God wanted me to marry, and it filled me with great joy, and I was very excited. And so we actually got married within about within a year of knowing each other.
I have definitely changed. I've completely changed, like even in the way how I look, the way how I view life, the way how I relate to other women, the way how I relate to men. And definitely something has grown in the way I see men. But I definitely have every now and then a thought. And I mean, yeah, there are definitely moments that I think, okay, you know, like, oh, I'm triggered a little bit. But I know where it comes from, and I know what the roots are to those triggers, and I also know what to do with it.
I got married, but I'd never really dealt with the root reasons, only up to a point. Then about 10 years ago, after we'd been married some time and had 5 children, we came across a ministry in the church which helped people with this. And at that point, I really began to get to grips with the deep reasons of why I had been so intensely same-sex attracted, because it was still there in my life and I knew that it was still a vulnerability. And I had a bit of a crisis about 10 years ago on that issue, which really propelled me to get to the bottom of it, which I did. And I received some real help from a particular ministry in this area. I wish that I had been able to access that much earlier on. And I have a deep heart for people now who are in my situation, who need help.
Ich heiße David und ich bin 44 Jahre alt. Ja, also ich hatte von Anfang an eine sehr schwierige Beziehung zu meinen Eltern. Ich habe über die Gefühle meiner Mutter gelebt und hatte es relativ schwer, in Beziehung mit meinem Vater zu treten. Aus dem Grund konnte ich dann auch nicht in der Weise mich öffnen und wirklich in Beziehung gehen, wo meine Gefühle, sage ich mal, Raum hatten. Und so war ich auch in der Schule mit Gleichaltrigen, habe ich mich sehr schwer getan und musste dort, sage ich mal, ja, eigentlich erleben, dass ich nicht dazugehöre, dass ich nicht angenommen bin bei denen.
Yes, I'm Ansel Pronk. I'm 44 years now. I'm married for 8 years with Sinomso and we have 3 children. And for the last 15 years we've been doing mission work with YWAM.
In der Vergangenheit musste ich meine Gefühle verstecken, mich selbst eigentlich verstecken, weil ich immer den Eindruck hatte, ich gehöre nicht zu den anderen, ich reiche nicht, es ist nicht gut genug, was ich mache und ich kann die anderen in ihren Emotionen, in ihren Gefühlen, in ihrem Wesen gar nicht erreichen, ihnen nicht genügen und gehöre deswegen nicht dazu.
My own personal journey started in a family with 5 children. Went to church, quite Orthodox church. My father was working very much, very hard to try to provide for the family, but we didn't see him that much at home. And then when I was about 16 years old, maybe a little bit earlier, 14, 15, I gradually started realizing that, yeah, to me something was wrong, because I didn't fall in love with girls as other guys did, and I started developing feelings for other guys. And I really hoped and prayed that that would go away, but it didn't. But I didn't live it out till I was about 22, 23 years old. When I got the opportunity, and for me then some of the worst years of my life started. Initially I really liked it, but also I realized more and more that I would never have children of my own, and that was a terrible thought. And most relationships were very short, only focused on my body, not on me, who I really was. And even for myself, I was wondering who I really was. And as others were not interested in the real me, I didn't like to look into it myself. Till I was about, well, it was about 16 years ago now. I went to a conference, and that was for the first time that I really got an encounter with the Lord. And that radically started changing my life. everything went instantly upside down. Not that my feelings for guys were away immediately, but for the first time I really realized that there is somebody who really loves me, who is really interested in me, and I'm really worth being the one who I am.
Das, was mich am meisten erreicht hat, wo ich am meisten Lebensmut wieder gefunden habe, das war die Männerreise, die ich mitgemacht habe, wo ich erkannt habe, dass ich ein Mann bin, der einen Wert hat. Und ich habe dort dann erlebt, dass in dem, wo ich das verstanden habe, wo ich das verinnerlicht habe, dass plötzlich meine schweren Depressionen und Selbstmordgedanken weg waren, die mich über Jahrzehnte begleitet haben.
Yes. Well, what happened in my life is that when I came back from the conference, I actually quit my job and I went to do the counseling schools with Youth with a Mission. And when I did particularly the addictive behavior counseling school, I came to realize so many issues that were not right in my life. And as I started dealing with those issues and found healing in those issues, the need for the sexual encounters and the pressure to ever go back into that really disappeared. They went down. And it was only a couple of years later, it was like some years that I really didn't have any desire. No strong desires to guys, but I didn't know yet how to fall in love with a girl. It was only some years later, as I started growing more and more and just living out who I really was. And I came also to realize that I'm not just a homosexual, I'm actually a human being, where sexuality is just a part of. And as I just started growing in all the other aspects, a couple of years later, I suddenly got butterflies in my stomach towards a woman, and that was in Nigeria. And I've not even married that woman, but as most times with relationship, it doesn't match immediately. But then about 2 years later, I got to know my wife and we started a relationship and got married.
Ich würde anderen empfehlen und raten, dass sie sich Hilfe suchen, die nicht festlegt, in welche Richtung ich mich zu entwickeln habe, sondern dass ich mir Hilfe suche, die mich in meinem Wesen, in dem, wie ich tatsächlich bin, mit all der Differenziertheit, mit all der Zerrissenheit, die ich in mir fühle, wo ich da ankommen kann und wo ich nicht schon festgelegt werde, ich bin homosexuell, also muss ich das leben, oder ich bin heterosexuell, also muss ich so sein. Nein, wo alles offen ist und wo wirklich Menschen da sind, die einem zuhören und verstehen, was man sagt.
I'm Michael and I'm 38 years old.
My being a human is far more than just being a sexual being. And my life is much more and is much more important. There are much more important things than just my sexuality. And for me, finding healing in many aspects of my life, and in the end, even receiving a healing in my sexuality was just like a big gift. But just knowing to be satisfied, to be in peace, is so important. And really finding fulfillment, doing things and work that I find fulfillment in, is so important. And for me, the biggest crown after my marriage, after receiving my wife and getting married, was to receive children. It was like a dream that was the most difficult thing when I realized that I had the homosexual feelings. It was the biggest blessing to receive 3 children.